Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
A clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
Welcome to Weirdstale.
Are you a weirdster like us?
Do you love the paranormal, true crime, mysteries, and stories of the just plain weird?
We're sisters, Melissa
and Stephanie.
One of us is obsessed with telling the other every weird story she can find. Every week on our show, Weirdstale, we have a story that's sure to leave you wondering.
You might even let out a welp.
Join us in Weirdstale every Thursday for a new episode of Sisters Speculating on the Strange.
Find us in your podcast app and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Weirdstale Podcast.
And TikTok at Weirdstale Pod.
What's weird with you?
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. Now, I owe you guys an episode here since I'm working on a couple other cases here. So, right now I'm actually working on a book about a dude named Ken McElroy. So it's pretty long. I mean, it's like fucking 400 and something pages. But, I mean, I'll probably make that like 3 parts, so do have some cryptids and shit set aside too, like I mentioned. So, just work and the holidays and everything just had me a tad busy. So, appreciate you guys letting me chill out for a bit. So, tonight's tale, nothing special. Just gonna give you guys a bunch of crimes that happened at a local McDonald's restaurant here. Well, a couple of them throughout the world. So, now I had these saved from like a long time ago when I did the McDonald's murders episode here. That was up in Sydney River, Nova Scotia. So curiosity obviously got the best of me here, so I started looking up some crazy crimes here about fucking McDonald's and everything. Everybody knows McDonald's, right? I mean, it's somewhere where you go to grab some shitty food or, go out to eat when you're drunk. Or, like, hangover kind of cravings and shit. I'm just going to cover some crazy shenanigans here that started at McDonald's. So this first tale happened up in Memphis, Tennessee. This is a city on the Mississippi River in southwest Tennessee. So the place is well known for its blues music. Well, there's lots of different strains of tunes that roll through here. I mean, there's Elvis, B.B. King, there's Johnny fucking Cash. And all these guys recorded at Sun Studio. This is a studio that opened up back in 1950s there by a dude named Sam Phillips. The place has a population of 618,000, a little over. And it's just a pretty nice place to visit. And McDonald's, for one, best place to stop, right? This event happened back in November of 2007 at the South Mendenhall location. So the tale involves 3 drag queens and some McDonald's employees. This was on a Sunday night. Restaurant employee Martez Briscoe. He was working the drive-thru window when he reportedly got into an argument. He ended up ignoring the 3 when they started tapping on the drive-thru window just to order and scream at him. So since he ignored them, which caused them to kind of go nuts, they had an issue with the food being like subpar. They were being wicked rude, so hence the reason why he didn't want to talk to them. So when they rolled up into the restaurant, they were talking their shit. They disrobed, kicked off their stiletto boots, hoop earrings, jackets, whatever they had on, and they just started fucking swinging. Started scratching people and stuff. They struck the manager on duty. His name is Albert Bolton. So they hit him with a tire iron, and they began to kick him, scratch him with their press-on nails and stuff. So Bolton had grabbed a pot of scalding French fry grease and just hurled it at his attackers. This guy ended up at the hospital when he got a huge blow in the head. So somebody threw a caution wet floor sign directly at his head, and it cranked him. So he ended up getting an ambulance picking him up here to go to the hospital. So after this, the three assailants smashed the drive-through window to pieces. They left it like all busted up and glass was everywhere and shit. The three assailants were eventually caught by Memphis police. Now, their names were Danny Mitchell, Lynn Gillespie, and Decorian Greer. Now, all three were charged with aggravated assault and damage of property over $500 by the Memphis Police Department. So the three were captured and then they were charged a day later. And I'm actually going to play a little news clip on you here that I found, so I'll pop that in here too.
Definitely not business as usual at this McDonald's Sunday night. Not at all.
This is the first one I've had like this.
Martez Briscoe was working the drive-thru when a car full of angry transvestites pulled up to his window.
Men trying to look like women. Drag queen, transsexual, what they were.
There was an argument at the window. That's when things started to get a little strange.
They come to the window, tap, tap, tap. I'm still ignoring, talking noise to them, so I get there, just them off even worse.
3 drag queens jumped out of the car, ran into the restaurant armed with a tire iron, and started swinging at employees. But not before they disrobed, kicking off their stiletto boots, hoop earrings, and jackets.
And they just decided they want to start a fight with the crew at McDonald's here. And they began to get ready to fight, taking off clothing to fight.
He swung, hit my mountains, and my mountains swung, hit back. So then when we started coming up, so they stepped back, get to taking off their shoes, boots, you know what I'm saying, whatever else they had to do to feel satisfied to fight.
Albert Bolton has Band-Aids covering scratches where one of the drag queens mauled him with his fingernails.
I was fighting with him. I was trying to get him. I was protecting him. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to get him out. And then he scratched me.
About that time, the manager grabbed a pot of hot French fry grease and launched it at them. One of the drag queens retaliated, smacking the manager in the head with a wet floor sign, sending him away in an ambulance. And before they drove off, they smashed in the drive-thru window.
Another day, that's all it is. Just another day.
Our next tale, it's going to be about a man named Muhammad Robinson. He was at McDonald's up in Las Vegas, Nevada. So this guy here, he mistakenly didn't hold the door open for a woman at a Las Vegas restaurant in the 3000 block of Las Vegas Boulevard. This was late August 27th. An argument started between the woman here, so she ended up challenging Robinson to meet her outside and telling him off and all this. So instead of going outside, Robinson just went into the restroom. So the woman then told a man that she was with about the whole ordeal here. His name was Alonzo Perez. So he started losing his shit once he heard about the argument. Now, he waited outside for this dude. So once Robinson came out of the restroom, came outside the McDonald's, he fired 4 rounds at Robinson. The round ended up striking him multiple times and shattering the restaurant's glass door. Now, once they got there, police ended up questioning everybody, and Perez admitted to pulling the trigger outside the McDonald's. He also admitted to smoking methamphetamine that night. Police said that Perez mentioned he fired his gun in self-defense because he thought Muhammad Robinson was armed and that he was waving his hands in the air, and then Perez just pointed the gun at him. Perez said that he didn't plan to shoot Robinson or anything like that, but shit happens, I guess. It sucks. Robinson told an officer that he had argued with a Hispanic man, and the woman kind of came out and talked shit or whatever before the shooting. Now, Robinson told a second officer, as he lay fatally wounded, that he shouldn't have called her a bitch. Police said Robinson died shortly after at a university medical center. Now, the guy who shot Robinson, he was well known to police here, and he was wanted for a few other crimes as well. So when he was questioned about the other incidents, Perez had a panic attack, I guess. He started crying, and he said he wanted an attorney. Now, a week before the deadly shooting, Perez is believed to have robbed a woman at gunpoint outside of a bank, and he fucking stole her car. And there were also warrants out for Perez's arrest in relation to a motel and battery incident. After Perez was arrested in connection with Robinson's death, he escaped from the North Las Vegas Police Department Detectives Bureau by snapping his handcuffs in half, standing on a chair, shifting a ceiling tile, and hoisting himself up into a crawl space. He then drove away in a rental truck that had been left outside the building with its engine running. He was recaptured in a few days here. 25-year-old Perez was later charged with 2 other homicides: the shooting deaths of 50-year-old Jeffrey Johnson and 37-year-old Candelario Duran. Perez appeared before Las Vegas and North Las Vegas judges and had a combined bail for the multiple incidents set at $1.7 million. And then he gets to spend the rest of his life in prison. So if he ever becomes eligible for parole, he actually faces deportation because he's not a U.S. citizen.
Well, an argument outside a North Las Vegas McDonald's turned deadly for 31-year-old man. Family members of Muhammad Robinson say he died Saturday night after he mistakenly did not hold the door open for a woman. Do police have any leads so far tonight?
North Las Vegas police are hoping these cameras will turn up some leads. We are hearing that one of the cameras caught the shooting on video. Now police are tracking a killer who murdered a man for not opening up a door here at this McDonald's.
He always made fun, even when the situation was bad. He always made the frown turn upside down.
14-year-old Minaya Sampson remembers the father who always made her smile. North Las Vegas police say on Saturday night, 31-year-old Muhammad Robinson was gunned down as he was walking outside this McDonald's near Pecos and Las Vegas Boulevard.
I didn't expect to be this sad, and it hurts me very badly. So you just turn yourself in because everyone is like, can't believe this happened.
Witnesses say Robinson was shot after getting into an argument with a woman over an unopened door. The woman yelled at Robinson after he did not hold the door to the McDonald's open. The angry woman notified a man she was with. That man, police say, opened fire on Robinson.
It was a stupid reason. It was honestly irrelevant, and it doesn't make sense. Why would you actually take someone's life over not opening a door?
Police have not released a description of the gunman. Sampson says it's important the murderer is put behind bars.
I love him. I wish he was still here.
The family needs help paying for this funeral. If you would like to help out the family.
Now our next tale is a McDonald's around Houston, Texas, when a big brawl had broken out. So there was an argument between 2 women that actually escalated into a brawl. The fight had started when customer Carla DeLeon began calling an employee names. Now the employee fought back against DeLeon, and then she poured a cup of water on her head. So at the time of this incident, DeLeon was with her young daughter. She was actually pregnant with her 5th child. Now the woman was on the receiving end of the punches, and she actually had her child like in her arms, like holding her while she was getting hit. Now the 2 women traded fists until a McDonald's employee actually was the one to come and break up the fight here. All the others just stood around, and customers were filming and shooting videos and shit. I mean, it's pretty sad you gotta hit a fucking person that's holding a baby in their arms, right? Now, in the article, the woman said that she was scared, and I turned around to look, like, because she was gonna go look at her child, and the other woman goes, "What are you looking at, bitch?" And yeah, her daughter ended up getting hit in the fight, actually, too. An ambulance was called for the little girl. She actually had a swollen cheek and a scratch on her face. Police say that the McDonald's employee was also struck in the attack by an unidentified woman. And this was the last thing that people expected, at the fucking fast food restaurant, right? They're going in to get their Big Macs and big fucking brawl breaks out. Police reports were filed, and the alleged assailant actually was charged with 2 counts of assault. Now, the employee was also charged with assault.
Just across the street, the McDonald's restaurant where that brawl is said to have broken out. It was just before noon on Thursday. But now the story behind that from a woman who says she and her little girl were the victims. 4 young daughters from 3 to 13, a 5th child on the way. Carla DeLeon has her hands full, but she's also dealing with this.
How sad is that? Where you're going to go and hit somebody when they have their baby in their arms? And I already stated I was pregnant on top of that.
Late Thursday morning, she says she and her 3-year-old were at a McDonald's on the North Freeway when she says her daughter was frightened by the woman in line behind them.
So I went like this, and she goes, "What you looking at?" me? And I said, I'm just wondering what my daughter's looking at. That's it.
It escalated, was captured on cell phone video, which was posted and went viral.
She's punching and punching my head, and my baby got hit at the time. And this is what really aggravates me, because I wasn't even able to properly defend her or myself.
DeLeon says she put her daughter down, threw a punch herself. A McDonald's employee tried to stand between the two women and was hit as well. She filed a police report with HPD, which is trying to identify the woman. Videos of public brawls aren't new, but DeLeon never thought she'd be in one. What she's learned from this.
But I'm just going to say, just always look at your surroundings and pay attention, and just take the drive-through, I guess.
Now, next tale. This will be like a drunken tale here. I mean, McDonald's and booze goes hand in hand. Now, the stores usually do like a good haul here, work in the later hours, so that's why they keep people on. People get hammered, they get their Big Mac on. This one happened back in March of 2015. This was up in Brooklyn, New York. There were a bunch of teens around the age of 16, so they were all hanging out in the restaurant lounge. Two girls started arguing, and then they had a full-on fight. It's actually turned into like multiple people on one. So a few teens were seen like kicking the shit out of this teen girl here, wearing a blue hooded sweatshirt. Some say this whole thing kind of fired up in retaliation for wronging a friend a couple months back in January there. Now, it all went on pretty quick here. Punches were thrown, and the group of teenagers just punched and kicked this victim repeatedly for more than 3 minutes. Eventually, she fell to the floor and kind of curled up beneath the table to kind of get away, but there were still a bunch of girls that continued to kick and punch her. So when police got there, they found out that the instigator's name was Ferguson. And they found out that she was trying to pick fights all around. She just ended up zeroing in on this girl here, and that she was the instigator. So she was the one mostly stomping on the victim's head and punching her in the face and stuff. So she later on admitted to beating her up, and then she stole some of her belongings and then threw them in the trash. Now, police later told the station that this woman here had a history of arrests. So police pulled the video, they reviewed it. They just wanted to check out the whole video surveillance here just to see who else might have been involved, and they caught a few more people after this. Now, bystanders were seen in the video just watching, recording the fight. Police said that nobody had even called for help for this little girl. Although the workers eventually did call 911. Everybody else was just fucking standing around watching. Now the video ends with several students picking up the girl here off the ground and then putting her on a bench. So at least there was a little bit of help for the girl. The girl was hospitalized with cuts and bruises from the attack, and the police said that she was later released. And the fact that nobody really stepped in to stop it, I mean, that's just kind of a little bit weird. I mean, why wouldn't you just be like, hey, can you guys fuck off, break it up kind of thing? The girls involved, they all attended the nearby high school as well. This was Erasmus Hall High School up on Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn. Now, this was built as an academy back in 1786, then it switched over to a high school around 1905, and it went forward with that throughout the 1940s. But due to poor academic scores here, the city closed the high school in 1994. Then they turned the building into Erasmus Hall Educational Campus. Now they use this as the location for like 5 separate small schools. So some good came from that, I guess. There was a reward of $1,000 offered up to track down any other girls involved in the incident here. So they did that through one point throughout the investigation. Now, this also blew up on the news because many others were just sickened to see the whole vicious and brutal attack that went on against the one girl. There was like 5 or 6 girls on this one girl, so the McDonald's franchise ended up releasing a statement as well, saying, "The safety of my employees and customers is my top priority. In keeping with my restaurant policy, my employees contacted the police at the onset of the situation." Now, the girl that did the attack, Anaya Ferguson, she was arraigned in Brooklyn on robbery and gang assault charges in connection with brawl. This was also recorded on a cell phone here and posted to Facebook, so eventually cops had this information as well. So, like I said, it prompted this whole outcry from parents too, and most of the community here. Now, Ferguson ended up getting charged as an adult for this crime. Now, law enforcement said that another person linked to the brawl was pulled off a plane up in Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. So this was on a Friday evening there, so she tried to dip out and fly to Jamaica. But they were alerted here and authorities came and, yeah, they got her off the plane there right before takeoff. They also alleged that Ferguson's part of this gang called the Young Savages. It's kind of a violent group known to be in like credit card scams and other such things. So just petty shit, I guess. Now, Ferguson also had a daughter around 1 year old at the time. Now, she's most likely looked after by the mother and grandmother here after all her upcoming legal shit, so.
4 of 6 suspects in the brutal beating at a Brooklyn McDonald's are now in police custody.
Police arrested 3 more teens in connection with this vicious attack caught on video, including one of them who was about to leave the country.
2 of those teens are expected to face a judge here at criminal court in the next few hours. One of them will be charged as an adult, and we just checked in with the clerk's office. They say that teen has a warrant out for her arrest on a different case, but wouldn't specify.
First, a cell phone captured this group of girls attacking a 15-year-old in McDonald's in the Flatbush section of Brooklyn on Monday. Now, a total of 4 suspects are behind bars in connection with the beatdown. Yesterday, a 15-year-old surrendered to police. So did 17-year-old Talani Marshall, both now charged with gang assault and robbery. We went to Marshall's apartment, the address provided by the NYPD, but no one answered the door for a comment. Investigators had a tough time tracking down their alleged accomplice. Sources say the 15-year-old was beach-bound and arrested in Atlanta, Georgia. Detectives there used an NYPD warrant and pulled her off a plane heading to Jamaica. She could be back in New York sometime today.
Anaya, why'd you do it?
The alleged ringleader, 16-year-old Anaya Ferguson, now behind bars on a $500,000 bond. She faced a judge Friday, and police say she's a gang member with a violent past. Sources tell us she's been arrested 6 times since September and pleaded guilty to stabbing her brother with a knife. She's also accused of threatening her grandmother. Prosecutors say Ferguson admitted to her role in the fight and stealing the 15-year-old victim's belongings and throwing them in the trash. The teen claims the victim wronged one of her friends in January, and this was retaliation. Parents in the area have seen this video, and they're worried for their children.
You have to worry about them because you can't take them to school every day. They got to be on their own.
Extra security now guarding the McDonald's, trying to calm fears and keep kids from loitering after school.
I feel better knowing, that they are around.
And police are still looking for 2 other teens involved in that fight. They have been identified. Now it's just a matter of finding them and making the arrests.
All right, so our next tale. This happened back in April of 2017. Now, this involves a couple men in a road rage incident up in Boston area here. Boston police reported that Ganga had pulled out a gun and fatally shot a 21-year-old named Joey DeBarros in the parking lot of a McDonald's located in Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. This happened outside of McDonald's at a busy intersection on Gallivan Boulevard and Granite Avenue. Now, the whole thing here first began on Granite Avenue. The 2 men kind of got enraged in a verbal argument following a traffic dispute. Now, during the argument, Ganga removed a handgun from the inside of his car and he shot DeBarros, who had already exited his vehicle. Now, Ganga fired like a couple shots out the window here from the passenger seat of the Chrysler 200. Now, he fired multiple shots through the window, hitting DeBarros. So when police arrived, they found him suffering from apparent gunshot wounds, and DeBarros later died at Boston Medical Center. So as for Ganga, he sped away from the scene in a vehicle owned by a close female associate. Boston police ended up tracking him down thanks to eyewitnesses who gave a description of the guy. They found his license plate, and he had matched the physical and clothing description of the gunman that was reported. Now, cell tower records also placed him at the scene at the time of the shooting, so He was on his phone here, that kind of pinged around, and that got him in shit. Now, when they did a search warrant of his place, they yielded an open box of PMZ 40 caliber ammunition. This was identical to the spent shell casing that was found in the car. Ganga was quickly charged with the murder, and in May 2017, he was denied bail by the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. He was 31. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole for first-degree murder and 4 to 5 years for unlawful possession of a firearm after he shot Joey DeBarros, who was 21, to death on April 13, 2017. Now, when he was in court, Ganga ended up smiling in court too. Like, the whole room was just packed with victims' friends, and people were crying and everything. This guy didn't give a fuck. Now, a cousin made a statement that said he was the opposite of what Ganga is. He was handsome, driven, and brave. They also mentioned that they believe that Ganga should be in jail for the rest of his life. Now, all this whole thing was just a fucking choice encounter. I mean, it didn't have to go down like this, but unfortunately it did. Now, police also made this comment here. We are pleased that we are able to arrest and charge the suspect for this brazen daytime shooting and for his involvement in the earlier assault. Now, next case. This one happened back in 2006. This one involves a Russian-born woman named Anna Esther Bittersky. She was born on April 26, 1988, in Novorenburg, Russia. Now, she had an older brother and 2 younger sisters. So by 2001, she was about 13 years old. Now, Anna's mother had moved the family to the small city of Vancouver, Washington. Now, Anna was a very determined young woman. She went to school at Fort Vancouver High School, and she worked a lot. I mean, she worked 3 jobs, actually. One was actually at a McDonald's restaurant located at Anderson Road in Vancouver. Now, friends described Anna as beautiful, caring, just anybody would get along with her, right? She always helped her classmates while in school, all that cool shit. So, she was a senior at the time. She planned on going to college, kind of broadening her horizon on education and everything, right? She also enjoyed her movies. That was her little hobby, too. Now, her favorite movies were Top Gun, The Emperor's New Groove, and Snatch. Now, on April 20th, 2006, a man named David Barton Sullivan, this guy already had 2 prior convictions for, like, sex crimes and everything. He was diagnosed as a schizophrenic. So, he left his home in Vancouver and then walked to McDonald's where she worked at. He didn't know her personally or anything like that. Now, she was sitting at a table in the McDonald's restaurant where she worked, and all of a sudden, this dude attacked her, and out of nowhere. He pulled a butcher knife from the sleeve of his coat, and he stabbed her under her left arm, and he pierced her heart. Shortly after the stabbing, he then left the restaurant, and he was taken into custody a short distance away. The victim was taken to Legacy Emmanuel Hospital up in Portland, where she died around 9 p.m. Now, she was to celebrate her 18th birthday about 6 days later. So instead of having a birthday for a fucking amazing person, the family now had to make fucking funeral arrangements. Now, David Barton Sullivan was found to be legally insane when he stabbed the woman. A psychologist and a psychiatrist who evaluated Sullivan during the last couple stays, he was at Western State Hospital. This is up near Tacoma. Now, doctors claimed he had a history of mental illness, actually dating back to his childhood there, so they caught this, I guess. So, originally they had thought that he was sane at the time and he was released, and he was just free to do his own thing. And what he did was fucking kill this young girl. All experts agreed that Sullivan, who lived at home with his parents, is a schizophrenic and mildly mentally challenged. Anna was buried at Evergreen Memorial Gardens up in Vancouver, Clark County. Michael Sullivan, David's father, he actually apologized to the family here, and he held back tears to say how sorry he was for the family. And it just sucks that this happened. I mean, the guy was mentally ill and she was just at work doing her thing. Our next tale begins May 28th, 2014. This was on a Wednesday. This happened at a McDonald's in the Chinese city of Zhejiang, Shandong province. So in walks a bunch of religious fanatics here. They belong to like some weird cult consisting of members of the Zhang family. So these were just like a bunch of cult members and shit. So they thought they were all kind of high and mighty here one day. So 6 members walked into a McDonald's. They demanded the phone numbers of every customer in there. Now, a woman named Wu Shawan, she was a saleswoman here in her mid-30s. She fucking refused to give anything to these cultists here. Like her cell phone number, personal phone number, anything. She said, fuck that. She was waiting after work to meet her husband and her 7-year-old son. This was in the mall McDonald's, so she didn't have time for this shit. They were blathering on about being missionaries, and they went on with their shit, right? Try to convince her. And a missionary actually is like a member of a religious group who's sent into an area in order to promote its faith or provide services to people or whatever. The word mission actually started fucking back in 1598. That's when it started getting tossed around and going from there. Now, the gang leader, Zhang Ledong, he told his followers to kill Wu, and they did. The murder weapons included a chair and a mop that the cult had recently purchased, and then they brought this fucking thing with them. So a chair was thrown at Wu, and her head and face were stomped. They said if anybody interferes, they'll die, and they just fucking continued beating the shit out of her. Now, videos were posted to Chinese social media, and it showed the cult members beating Wu even after like the metal mop handle had broken. Now, Zhang Ledong and Zhang Fan, they were executed in February of 2015 for their crime. And the other 4 cult members were given sentences that range from like 7 years all the way to life imprisonment. And unfortunately, Wu later died from her injuries. So, sucks. You just go to McDonald's and wait for your family and you get some idiots rolling in. Now, our next tale happened up in Germany on June 22nd, 2016. This is at a McDonald's restaurant where a young adult named Ali David Sambali, both his parents were Iranian German. So when he was 18 years old, this guy had like an Iranian German dual nationality type deal. So this kind of includes like immigrants from Iran to Germany, as well as like other descendants here of Iranian heritage or background. Just a little definition on that. Now, the evening of July 22nd of 2016, this is around 6 p.m., David Sambali opened fire at a McDonald's restaurant near the Olympia shopping mall in Musak district. Then he moved inside the mall, continued on with his little rampage, and over a period of a few minutes here, he shot 9 people to death before killing himself. Now, despite the initial reports of multiple attacks all around here, police couldn't confirm any other attacks in the locations that people thought they were in. It was just located in this shopping mall area. So he stayed in the restaurant from about 5 p.m. till about 5:50 p.m. Now, he went into the restaurant's toilets on the first floor. He left a manifesto on his laptop. Then about 8 minutes later, he left the toilets and he opened fire on a group of 6 teenagers sitting at a table. Killed 5 and he wounded another. And he did this using a handgun that he had taken from his backpack. This was a Glock 17 9mm semi-automatic pistol. Now he immediately left the restaurant, turned to the right, and began shooting at people fleeing towards like an electronics shop here. He fired at 2 other vehicles that were parked. He fired 16 bullets in this whole area. Now, he killed 3 people, and he wounded 3 others. Sambali then crossed the street, and he slowly walked into the shopping mall, where he fatally shot another teenager over near the elevators. Now, at about 6 p.m., Sambali walked from the shopping mall over a covered footbridge to the adjoining multi-story car park. So while he was on this bridge, he fired shots towards the parking lot here at a passerby, but nobody was hurt. He fired 13 rounds at 2 unoccupied parked vehicles, and then he walked up to the top parking deck. There he had an argument with a man who shouted at him from his balcony, and then during the argument, he fired 2 shots at the man. And another man who was also on his balcony was wounded by a ricocheting bullet. What odds, eh? He then fired 3 more times towards the mall and then towards an employee without hurting anybody. So police officers were on the scene here. They spotted the gunman from an outdoor balcony of the mall. So one officer fired a shot from a submachine gun, but he missed. At 8:26 p.m. he went outside and was confronted by police officers, and then he fatally shot himself in the head, so he committed suicide. Now, given the whole, fucking Islamist terrorist attacks there back in Europe at that time, many were quick to kind of characterize this kid as, an extremist and a terrorist. There was one female eyewitness there. She went on CNN, and she said she heard him shout, Allah Akbar, meaning God is great, during the attack. Now, this was an early witness here, and she was identified as Loretta. So she talked to the CNN and all that on the phone here. A lot of folk that were around that remember, they didn't really buy that statement, and there weren't a lot of people that remembered him even saying that, so other reports and everything kind of casted doubt on the whole theory that religion was his motive and shit. Now, the aftermath and investigation was done. It said that the shooting appeared to be a classic shooting rampage and not terrorism. So I'll give you the definition of both here. Now, rampages were often classified as acts of terrorism. Now, the term rampage is related to, fury. Rampage consists of indiscriminate and violent attacks. Police said that the gunman was obsessed with mass shootings and that he had written material on such attacks. He found a bunch of shit in his room here. He had one book there, Why Kids Kill, Inside the Minds of School Shooters. Nothing religious was found in his room, so religion didn't have shit to do with this topic. The gunman had been planning the shooting for about a year, and he purchased his gun illegally on the dark net. The gun that he used originated in Slovakia, and then its serial number was totally removed, so it was all scratched off and shit. Now, the dark web. This is a hidden part of the internet that allows users to hide their identity and their location, and it's only accessible through specific software. Now, Sombly, he was known to actually have undisclosed mental health issues. And the cops made mention that he had no prior criminal record. Now, friends and neighbors said that the kid was a nice boy. He had a part-time job distributing local newspapers here, and they described him as very polite. Now, he was largely isolated from his peers. He suffered years of bullying by his classmates at school, and some of this include verbal and physical abuse. Now, Sombly had undergone psychiatric treatment for depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. In 2015, he'd been treated for 2 months as an inpatient in a mental care facility. Now, a former classmate of his said that we always used to mob him in high school, and he always told us that he was going to kill us. So the Bavarian State Police also urged the public not to publish any online photos or videos of the shooting. They provided a special upload platform that allowed witnesses to upload photos, audio, or any other video recordings that could help them assist the investigation.
In Munich, Germany, investigators are learning more about the gunman who killed at least 9 people on Friday before turning his gun on himself. 27 people were injured. The suspect is 18-year-old German-Iranian David Sanboli. Seth Doan is in Munich.
German authorities say the 18-year-old Munich shooter acted alone.
had no links to terrorist groups, suffered from depression, and was obsessed with mass killings. A search at the shooter's family apartment today turned up reading material about mass murderers, including right-wing fanatic Anders Breivik, who killed 77 people in Norway exactly 5 years ago. Many of the 9 victims of Friday's shooting were teenagers. The first bullets hit the boy next to me, 29-year-old Hussein Bayri told us. I tried talking to him while the shooter continued his rampage, and I thought, I'm next. This video apparently shows Bayri trying to save the teenager's life. I tried to put my hands in his wound so he wouldn't bleed to death. Bayri heard the shooter yelling, "I'm German, you expletive foreigners."
Police say that the shooting that unfolded here was premeditated, that the gunman had hacked into someone's Facebook page and had made it appear as though there was a promotional offer, trying to lure people to the scene.
The killer's body was found not far from the scene. He'd shot himself and had a backpack full of ammunition. Hussein Bayri says he's traumatized.
You weren't able to save him?
The boy said, "I can't go on any longer," and he drew his last breath. So yet again, sidewalks have been turned into somber memorials. And another major European city is left shaken.
Now our next case takes place in San Isidro. This is a district of San Diego, California, immediately north of the Mexico-United States border. So this place has a population of over 28,000. Now all this happened around 4 p.m. on July 18th, 1984. A 41-year-old man named James Oliver Huberty, born October 11th, 1942. He was born in Canton, Ohio. Now, he was the second of 2 children, born to Earl Vincent. This guy was like a quality inspector. And the mother was Isel Evelyn Huberty. She was a homemaker. Both parents kind of dipped into religion a little bit here. Both were regular attendees at the local Methodist churches. When Huberty was 3 years old, he actually contracted polio. Now, when he was young, he was required to wear like steel and leather braces on both legs. Huberty ended up making a recovery from this. Didn't really affect him too much, but he will be left with a mild limp for the rest of his life. In 1950, Earl Huberty purchased a 155-acre farm in Mount Eaton. That's like 63 hectares or something. Now, the wife refused to live in such a rural location, so she refused to even look at the property, actually. So shortly thereafter, the mother just abandoned her family and she fucked off to become this sidewalk preaching fucking missionary here up in Tucson, Arizona. So that's what she did with her life. And she just dipped out of the family completely. Now, Huberty found his mother's abandonment, like, really fucking devastating, so it was pretty emotional for this guy. Damn near broke the kid. Now, his father later recollected finding his son kind of slumped over against the family chicken coop here, crying heavily shortly after she left. Huberty was a kid who just had a few friends. He just played target practice with shit, right? Like, he'd buy targets, he'd shoot at them with this pistol that he had there, and he was always seen by a neighbor just practicing his shooting and shit, right? He was getting pretty good at it. And by his teens, he was something of a pro. So, I mean, that was this kid's hobby. Now, due to his limp, his family's religion, his inability to, like, socialize and all that, Huberty was frequently targeted by bullies. And this was at the Waynesdale High School. So he was beat up there a lot. Kid was an average student, though. He ended up graduating 51st out of class of 77 back in 1960. Now, in 1962, Huberty enrolled at Malone College, where he studied sociology. So then he kind of opted out a little bit there to study at the Pittsburgh Institute of Mortuary Science. Then he graduated with honors from there, from the Institute in 1964. Shortly after, the guy was issued a funeral director's license, and then the following year, an embalmer's license. So this is what he chose to do. He wanted to be this whole funeral director dude. Now, in early 1965, Huberty got married. He married Etna Markland. And then he got a gig at the funeral home up in Canton, Ohio. Now, the dude was extremely good at embalming, but Huberty, like, his introvert personality kind of made him a little bit difficult when dealing with members of the public. So they didn't really let him do too much shit out front. So this did cause, like, minor conflicts with kind of the higher-ups here and there and whatnot, but nonetheless, Huberty worked in this profession for about 2 years. So then he took up profession as a welder for a firm up in Louisville. He worked here for a little bit here. It was about 2 years before he secured a better paid position here at Babcock and Wilcox up in June of 1969. Now, although this guy was like a little bit of a recluse, his employees considered him a reliable worker. Like, he always showed up and he willingly took overtime. He earned promotions, and even in the mid-1970s, the guy earned between $25,000 and $30,000 per year. I mean, that's pretty good for back then. So shortly after the guy was hired, him and his wife moved into a 3-story home in the affluent section of Massillon, Ohio. Now, in the winter of '71, his home was destroyed by a fire. So shortly afterwards, James and Etna, they bought another house on the same street, and they later built a 6-unit apartment building on the grounds of their first home. So they also ran this whole thing too. Now, they later had kids. Their daughters were born 1972 and 1974. That was Zelia and Cassandra. Huberty had a history of domestic violence. He was frequently slapping or punching his daughters, holding knives to their throats, crazy shit like that. Now, he spent a bit of time knocking around his wife on more than one occasion. So Etna filed a report with the Canton Department of Children and Family Services and stated that her husband had messed up her jaw here. Although she kind of like insisted like he beat her up on more than one occasion, it's noted here that he only struck her one time. Now, in 1976, Etna repeatedly attempted to persuade her husband to seek counseling to kind of alleviate his sources of stress. And he refused this, just flat out said, fuck it, I'm not doing any form of therapy or anything. Now, in personal efforts to kind of help her husband's temper, his anxiety, paranoia, all that, she wanted to like kind of not really influence or control his behavior or anything. She kind of wanted to just minimize the possibility of like pissing him off or anything, right? Now, this would be where she started taking up like using tarot cards there. She claimed she was able to read his future by reading and using these cards. And Huberty believed her. I mean, Etna's readings would produce a temporarily calming effect over the guy here, and then he would typically follow the recommendations that his wife made in those readings. So it was kind of working. She was trying to get this guy to calm down. To his neighbors and his coworkers and shit here, like, Huberty was perceived as a sullen and ill-tempered, paranoid individual. He was kind of obsessed with firearms, and some said he was a total fucking crackpot. A whacked-out conspiracy theorist. Now, Huberty believed that an escalation of the Cold War was also inevitable, and that President Jimmy Carter and later Ronald Reagan, they were like fucking spying on him and conspiring against him and shit. So Huberty believed that a breakdown of society was fast approaching, perhaps through like economic collapse or like nuclear war or anything, right? That'd be nice. And hurry the fuck up. Now, he also committed himself to prepare like fucking the survival of the collapse of civilization and everything here, so he kind of provisioned his house with ample reserve supplies, non-perishable food, numerous guns, and he actually fucking went to the point of like actually buying guns off his co-workers so he could fucking stock up. He had intended to use those to defend his home during what he believed was the coming of the apocalypse. Now, according to one family acquaintance here, buddy's name was Jim, he said Huberty's home was just loaded with firearms all over. I mean, guns were just fucking laying around everywhere. It got pretty bad, he said. Now, anywhere in the house, Wherever he was sitting or fucking standing, this guy could just reach over and grab a gun. All of them had their safety catch disabled there. Each firearm was loaded, so yeah. November 1982, Huberty ended up getting laid off from his welding job at Babcock and Wilcox. So this caused him to kind of shit a brick. He was super stressed out. His dire financial situation was kaput. And he couldn't provide for his family. So, that's going to fucking weigh on you. After he was let go, one coworker remembered this kind of statement or comment that he made here. So Huberty said that if he was unable to provide for his family, he would intend to commit suicide and take everybody with him. Now, according to his wife, Etna, after her husband became unemployed, Huberty began hearing voices in his head. Now, in early 1983, he placed a loaded pistol against his temple, threatening to commit suicide. Edna successfully stopped him from shooting himself, and although he later said to her, "You should have let me shoot myself," she was just taken back in awe, right? Like, what the fuck do you even say to that, right? Now, he was still unable to find lasting employment in Ohio. So James and Etna Huberty sold their 6-unit apartment building for $115,000 in the spring of 1983. So shortly thereafter, he obtained a welding job with Union Metal Manufacturing Company. Now, this employment lasted 5 weeks or so before the closure of the plant, so it was pretty fucking short-lived. Now, weeks after this, he became unemployed. Huberty and one of his daughters were injured in a traffic accident. So in the weeks following this accident, Huberty noted an aggravation in neck pains. He actually endured these since childhood, but they were a little bit stronger now. So we also noted that on occasion, like, increasing nerve tremors would, like, come in his hands at fucking different times here and through his arms. So in the summer of 1983, the Hubertys applied for residency down in Mexico. Believing that money was obtained from the sale of the apartment building and everything would financially sustain the family longer in Mexico than in America. So they just sold their home for $12,000 in cash in September. They were pretty good now if they got everything else situated. Huberty and his family moved from Ohio down to Tijuana. This is October '83. So he brought this huge collection of guns with him, ammunition, and a shitload of survival supplies. Now, Huberty's wife and daughters embraced their new environment. They became friendly with the neighbors and everything, but Huberty was kind of a dick. He was unable to find employment in Tijuana. And then he quickly regretted his decision to relocate in Mexico. Within 3 months, the family relocated to San Isidro. It's like a largely poor district of San Diego, just north of Mexico, United States border. Now, back around 1984, this whole place had a population of 13,000. Now, the family rented an apartment at Cottonwood Apartments, and then the guy looked for employment. Now, the fact that his family were the only Americans within the apartment complex kind of pissed this guy off, right? Like, he was rude to his neighbors. He didn't care much for them, right? Sometime later, he applied from a newspaper ad there. There was a job that was doing security guard training in a federally funded program. He completed this course on April 12th. Then he got hired on with the security firm up in Chula Vista. And he'd been assigned with guarding a condominium complex. So the money that he earned kind of enabled the family to have some of their furniture shipped up from Ohio here, and then the family relocated to a 2-bedroom apartment on Adverall Road the same month. So the monthly rent for that place, I believe he said, was $450 a month here. Now on July 10th, Huberty was summarily dismissed from his job. His employers had informed Huberty the reason for his dismissal were poor work performances. So Huberty was all pissed off here now that he couldn't find work. He was getting depressed. And he was also hearing voices in his head. A couple days later here, this would be July 18th, Huberty, his wife, and his children ended up visiting the San Diego Zoo. So they went out and did some family things here. They had lunch at a local McDonald's and then they headed home. So shortly after that, Huberty walked into his bedroom, said to his wife, "I want to kiss you goodbye." So After the kiss, she asked where he was going, 'cause she was starting supper soon. Now, Huberty calmly said, "I'm going hunting. Hunting for humans." So, he left with a bunch of guns, ammo, and he headed out the fucking door. So he passed his daughter, he said goodbye, and he also said, "I won't be back." And then he drove down to San Isidro Boulevard, and then he eventually entered a McDonald's parking lot. So Huberty rolled into the McDonald's here. First thing he did was yell out, "Freeze!" And then he opened fire on the restaurant staff and customers. So he told diners to lie on the floor. Whether they did this or not, he shot a few. Some people there were just lying there like really scared shitless after like witnessing people die and everything, right? Like they're like, "Oh, well, if we follow this guy's orders, we'll survive." No. Huberty first aimed a shotgun at a 16-year-old employee named John Arnold. So this was like from a distance of approximately 15 feet or so. And then he aimed the gun at assistant manager Guillermo Flores. So Buddy went, "Hey John, that guy's gonna shoot you." Then Huberty pulled the trigger and nothing happened. So Huberty ended up checking his gun out. So as he was checking his gun out here, another manager, a 22-year-old Neva Kane, had walked towards the service counter, and then this was in the direction of Arnold. So Arnold thought the whole thing was just like a bad joke or whatever, right? So kind of started to walk away. So as everybody thought this was this whole fucking joke and everything, right? Huberty had fired a shotgun towards the ceiling before aiming the Uzi at Kane again and shooting her once beneath her left eye. And she died minutes later. Now, people were freaking out and everything now. So after that, Huberty fired his gun at Arnold. Then he wounded the teenager in the chest and the arm, so he got him with a shotgun blast. Now, he referred to all the people in the restaurant as dirty swine, Vietnamese assholes, different comments like that. So then he started boasting and claiming that he killed 1,000, and then he claimed to kill 1,000 more, so I guess he killed 1,000 up in Vietnam there. So upon hearing Huberty's profane rant, seeing Kane and Arnold shot, one customer, 25-year-old Victor Rivera, he tried to persuade Huberty not to shoot anyone else. In response, Huberty shot Rivera 14 times repeatedly, shouting, "Shut up," as Rivera screamed in pain. Customers tried to run and hide beneath like tables and booths to kind of get away from this guy. So then Huberty turned his attention towards 6 women and children that were huddled together. He first killed 19-year-old Maria Silva with a shotgun to the chest. Then he fatally shot a 9-year-old Claudia Perez in the stomach, cheek, thigh, hip, leg, chest, back, armpit, and head with the Uzi. So he just fucking emptied like everything that he had into that 9-year-old. He then wounded Perez's 15-year-old sister, Imelda. He shot her once in the hand, the same weapon, and then fired upon an 11-year-old Aurora Pena with a shotgun. So Aurora Pena, initially wounded in the leg, had been shielded by her pregnant aunt, 18-year-old Jackie Reyes. Now Huberty shot Reyes 48 times with the Uzi, killing her. Now beside his mother's body, 8-month-old Carlos Reyes sat up, he wailed, and then Huberty shouted at the baby, and then killed him with a single pistol shot at the center of the back. I mean, people tried to stop this guy, nothing happened, right? Like, they couldn't do it. Shortly after, he shot and killed a 62-year-old trucker named Lawrence Lewis. And then he started targeting a family that was seated around a play area of the restaurant. Now, they tried to shield their son and their friends beneath the tables with their bodies. So 31-year-old Blythe Regan, he had shielded her 11-year-old son, Matau, beneath one booth as her husband, Ronald, protected Matau's friend, 12-year-old Keith Thomas, beneath a booth that ran directly across from them. Now, Ronald Hera had urged Thomas not to move, shielding the boy with his body. Thomas was shot in the shoulder, the arm, and the left elbow. but he was not seriously wounded. Now, Ronald here, however, was shot 6 times in the stomach, chest, arm, hip, shoulder, and head, but he survived the ordeal. Now his wife Blythe and son Matau, they were both killed by numerous gunshots to the head, unfortunately. Now nearby there were 3 women that had also attempted to hide beneath a booth. There was 24-year-old Guadalupe Del Rio. She was laying against a wall. She was shielded up by her friends. There was 25-year-old Gloria Ramirez and 31-year-old Arisdelcy Vuevalas Vargas. Hope I said that right. Now, Del Rio was hit several times, but was not seriously wounded. Ramirez was unhurt, and then Vargas received a single gunshot wound to the back of the head, and she died of her wound the next day. She was the only person fatally wounded who lived long enough to reach the hospital. At another booth here, Huberty killed 45-year-old banker Hugo Vasquez with a single gunshot to the chest. And then the floodgates opened at phone calls to 911 here. Now, many calls to emergency services were also made here. This was shortly after 4 p.m. Police were quickly notified of the shooting, and there was another child that was shot who had been taken to a post office on San Isidro Boulevard. Now, a quick little mistake happened here. There was a communication error between the dispatch that had mistakenly directed responding officers to another location 2 miles from the San Isidro Boulevard McDonald's restaurant. So they didn't go to the right one the first time. So this delayed the imposition of the lockdown by several minutes, and the only warnings to civilians near the restaurant were given by people passing by and stuff. Like, people were just going like, hey, stay away, there's a gunman here, all that. So shortly after 4 p.m., a young woman named Lydia Flores drove into the parking lot. She stopped at the food pickup windows. She noticed a bunch of broken glass and shattered windows and shit, the sounds of gunfire going off. And then she looked up, and there this dude was, just fucking shooting people. So she reversed her car until she crashed into a fence. Then she ran out. She hid in some bushes with her 2-year-old daughter, Melissa, until the shooting had ended. Now, at approximately 4:05 p.m., a Mexican couple, Astolfo and Marcilia Felix, had drove towards one of the service areas here at the restaurant, and they see nothing but a bunch of broken glass. So they initially thought that renovation work was being done, because accidents happen. And Huberty strided towards the car here. They kind of thought this dude was like a repairman or something. Now Huberty fired a shotgun and his Uzi at the couple and their 4-month-old daughter Carlita. He struck Marcilia in the face, arms, and the chest, blinding her in one eye and then permanently rendering one hand unusable. Now her baby was critically wounded in the neck, the chest, and the abdomen. So Astolfo was wounded in the chest and the head. So Astolfo handed the crying child to the young woman named Lucia Velasco, and then his wife ended up collapsing against a car. The baby was rushed to a nearby hospital as these two were assisted. And all 3 members of the Felix family had survived. There were also 3 11-year-old boys who rode their BMX bikes into the west parking lot. So Huberty seen them and he shot the 3 boys with his shotgun and the Uzi. Now, Joshua Coleman had fell to the ground. He was critically wounded in the back, the arm, and the leg. He later recalled looking at his 2 friends here, Omar Alonso Hernandez and David Flores Delgado. So they were just kind of laying there, right? Hernandez was on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds to his back, and he was so fucked up he started vomiting. Delgado had received several gunshot wounds to his head. Coleman survived. Hernandez and Delgado both died at the scene. Huberty then noticed an elderly couple, 74-year-old Miguel Victoria Ula and 69-year-old Ada Velasquez Victoria, walking towards the entrance. As Miguel reached to open the door for his wife, Huberty fired his shotgun, killing Ada with a gunshot to the face, and he kind of wounded Miguel in the process. So an uninjured survivor named Oscar Mondragon. He later reported observing Miguel cradling his wife in his arms and wiping blood from her face. And he was just shouting curses at Huberty, right? Like freaking the fuck out, like you just shot my wife, right? Now, he then approached the doorway, he swore at Miguel, and then he killed him with a shot to the head. Approximately 10 minutes later, after the first call had been placed to emergency services, police arrived at the correct McDonald's restaurant. So the dude was armed to the fucking teeth. He had a shotgun. This was a Winchester 1200 12-gauge pump-action shotgun, a 9mm Uzi carbine, and 9mm Browning HP semi-automatic pistol. He also had a cloth bag filled with hundreds of rounds of ammunition for each weapon. Now, a total of 45 customers were present inside that restaurant at that time. And Huberty wasted no time fucking with this guy here, so he started firing at his patrol car. Officers imposed a lockdown on the area that spanned about 6 blocks from the site of the shootings. So they set up a command post quickly about 2 miles away from the McDonald's. They deployed about 175 officers, all in different positions. So they wanted to kind of roll up here and get things situated. And then later on, the SWAT came in about an hour later, and then they placed more men around. So Huberty was shooting and switching between guns here and there. Police were trying to figure out how many people were inside the restaurant. Maybe this dude was like holding people hostage, who knows, some dude that escaped earlier. He told the cops that they were only dealing with one guy, and he was the guy doing the damage. Now, he wasn't taking anybody hostage, he was just fucking killing people at will. So at 5:05 p.m., the cops got word that they could take him out if they could get a clear shot. Now, at one point during this, he had his portable radio, possibly just to search up like for news reports of the shooting and stuff like that, right? But he took this and he selected a music station, and then he shot more people as he danced around to some music. Now, Huberty searched the kitchen area. He discovered 6 employees in there. So he shouted, "Oh, there's more. You must be trying to hide from me, you bunch of bastards." Then a female employee screamed in Spanish, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." And then Huberty opened fire, killing her. And her name was Paulina Lopez. There was also 19-year-old Elsa Boro Friera and 18-year-old Margarita Padilla. Now, he critically wounded another here, 17-year-old Albert Leos. So immediately before Huberty had begun shooting, Padilla grabbed the hand of her friend and her colleague, this was 17-year-old Wendy Flanagan. Then they began to run. Padilla was fatally shot. And there were a few other employees here. There was Flanagan, 4 other employees, and a female customer and her infant child. These guys were hidden in a basement utility room. So they were later joined by like Leos, who had crawled into the utility room after being shot. And he was shot 5 times. Now, moments later, a fire truck drove up. Huberty opened fire. He repeatedly riddled the vehicle with bullets, and he slightly wounded one other dude. So, he heard a wounded teenager, this was 19-year-old Jose Perez, moaning and making noise. Huberty shot him in the head, and then the youth just slumped dead beside the booth where he sat. And Perez ended up dying along with his friend and his neighbor, 22-year-old Gloria Gonzalez, and another young woman named Michelle Carncross. This guy's just fucking killing everybody, man. He doesn't care. Now, at one point, Aurora Pena, who would kind of lay between her dead aunt here, her baby cousin, and her 2 friends, she noted that during the firing here, she opened her eyes. She saw Huberty nearby, staring in her direction. And then he swore, and he threw a bag of french fries at Pena, and then he retrieved his shotgun, and then shot the child in the arm, the neck, and the jaw. Aurora Pena survived, although she would remain hospitalized longer than any other survivor. Now, around the time of 5:17, Huberty walked around from the service counter towards the doorway, close to the drive-through window of the restaurant. Now, right there was a 27-year-old police SWAT sniper named Charles Foster. He deployed to a strategic position on the roof of the post office directly opposite of the restaurant, so he had a view on the perpetrator from his sights of his .308 caliber rifle. Foster fired a single round from a range of approximately 35 yards, so about 32 meters or so. The bullet entered Huberty's chest, and then it severed his aorta just beneath his heart, and then exited through his spine. So this left like a 1-inch exit wound and sent Huberty falling backwards onto the floor directly in front of the service counter, and then fucking killed him almost instantly. So Foster had relayed back to the responding officers that he had killed him, so letting them know that the threat was over type deal, right? So police entered the restaurant about 1 minute later. Now a police sergeant focused his gun on Huberty, then he noticed like a wounded girl kind of moving around, so he looked at her, and then he asked her if the male suspect was deceased, and the girl nodded her head, yes. Now, the entire incident lasted for 77 minutes. The fatal bullet fired by Charles Foster was one of the only 5 fired by police at Huberty throughout the whole duration of this massacre. Now, Huberty fired off about 257 rounds of ammunition, killed about 20 people, and he wounded many others. One of the victims was pronounced brain dead upon arriving at the hospital here and then died the following day. 17 of the victims were killed inside the restaurant, and 4 in the immediate vicinity. Only 10 individuals inside the restaurant were uninjured, 6 of whom had hidden inside the basement utility room. Now, several victims had tried to patch up their own wounds with like napkins, wrappers, and all that other shit here that they had. Now, of the fatalities, 13 died from gunshot wounds to the head, 7 from gunshot wounds to the chest, and 1 victim, this was a 8-month-old Carlos Reyes, from a single 9mm gunshot to the back. The victims, whose ages ranged from 4 months all the way to 74 years, they were of Mexican or Mexican-American ancestry. Prior to shooting several of his victims, Huberty had shouted accusations or insults at them. On one occasion, he had also shouted that he himself did not deserve to live, but he was going to take care of this matter. Throughout the whole incident, Huberty had repeatedly shouted that he had been a veteran of the Vietnam War. And it was actually looked into here, and it showed that he never actually served in any military branch. So cops cleared things up pretty good here, and they got everything situated, brought the guy's body down for an autopsy. But this dude's autopsy had shown that he had a combination or some exposure to like some chemicals here. He also ingested high levels of monosodium glutamate, so this is like found in the McDonald's foods that he regularly consumed. Now, James and Etna had regularly eaten McDonald's fast food like throughout the course of their marriage. All the random chemicals and shit from like work and everything kind of fucked them up in the long run, like welding without your work equipment and stuff, right? That'll catch up to a guy over time. So all this shit ended up giving this guy like a bunch of induced delusions and uncontrollable rage. Now, a lawsuit was started here by the wife, but it was dismissed in 1987. Now, as we wind down here, folks, I'll tell you a couple more quick things here. So they ended up making a movie about this here. This was called Bloody Wednesday. This was made back in 1988, based on these events. And they also made a documentary called 77 Minutes, like that's out there too. So within a year of the incident, Etna would remark to both police and the media her regrets in not letting her husband commit suicide on that occasion. So all in all, he fatally shot 21 people and wounded 19 others before police snipers killed him. And this was a very hard event for the nation and like one of the most darkest days in the history of San Diego County. And nobody's going to expect you're just going to walk into McDonald's with a bunch of ammo and guns and fucking kill a bunch of people. Now, the day after the massacre, reporters visited James Huberty's father. This was up in Mount Eaton, Ohio. They wanted to see if they could gain any further information about his son. So they discussed his son's childhood and the family's religious background. Earl Huberty pointed to a painting here of a lost sheep. This is by a guy named Jordan River. Then he started to cry. So he informed reporters that yesterday was the worst day of my life. I feel so sorry for these people. People also brought up the fact that an estimated 73 minutes had passed between the time that the first police officer had arrived and then Huberty's death. So they checked in on this here, and the fuck up was when they sent them to the wrong McDonald's at the first part, and then the SWAT team members were delayed by rush hour traffic. They said the police acted appropriately in their method of response. So they killed a guy that was killing people. Now, McDonald's had temporarily suspended all television and radio ads in the days following the massacre. Even arch-rival fast food chain Burger King also temporarily suspended all forms of advertising out of respect. And within 2 days of the massacre, the restaurant had been fully refurbished and renovated. The restaurant planned to open again for business, but following some discussions between community leaders and McDonald's executives, a decision was reached on July 24th that the restaurant would not reopen. Now, the renovated restaurant was demolished at midnight on September 26th. So following the closure and the demolition of the restaurant, McDonald's donated the ground to the city with the stipulation that no restaurant be constructed upon the site. So, for over 4 years, alternate plans to convert the site into either like a memorial park or a shrine to honor the dead. The land was sold in February 1988 to Southwestern College for $136,000. So they made an agreement that a 300 square foot area in front of the campus would have a permanent memorial to the 21 victims. Now, McDonald's later constructed another restaurant about 2 blocks from the site of the massacre on the West San Isidro Boulevard. Now, the restaurant chain also announced a commitment to donate $1 million to the Survivors Fund here. And McDonald's founder Ray Kroc also added a personal contribution of $100,000 to assist with the burial costs, financial aid for relatives of the deceased, and counseling for the survivors. The sum total for the donations received for this fund would exceed $1.4 million. Now, amidst impromptu protests from like some of the residents and stuff here and donors and all that, Edna Huberty received the first payout from this fund. Now, a permanent memorial to those killed in the massacre was formally unveiled in 1990. So this memorial consists of 21 hexagonal white marble pillars. They're like anywhere from 1 to 6 feet. So each bear a name of the victim. The sculpture was designed by a Southwestern College student. This dude's name was Roberto Valdez. He said the 21 hexagons represent each person that died, and they are all different heights, representing the variety of ages and races of the people involved in the massacre. Now, he said they're bonded together in hopes that the community, in a tragedy like this, will stick together like they did. The monument is located at 460 West San Isidro Boulevard. Each anniversary of the massacre, the monument is decorated with flowers, so everybody still remembers and everybody still pitches in. Now, several family members of those killed, along with like some survivors of the massacre, they had filed lawsuits against McDonald's and the San Diego Police Department. So these lawsuits were heard in the San Diego County Superior Court. All lawsuits were consolidated. So on July 25, 1987, the California Court of Appeal ruled that McDonald's, or any other business here, has no duty of care to protect its customers from an unseen assault by a murderous madman. And the implemented security measures typically used by restaurants to deter criminals, such as like guards, closed-circuit television cameras, could not possibly have deterred the perpetrator, as he did not care about his own survival. So furthermore, the San Diego Police Department were also exonerated of any negligence. So in July 1986, Edna Huberty had filed a lawsuit against both McDonald's and her husband's longtime former employer, Babcock and Wilcox. So the civil suit was seeking $5 million in damages, asserting her husband's murder spree had been triggered by a combination of like a poor diet and her husband working around highly poisonous metals without adequate protection over the course of many years. Now, the suit specifically cited that there were no traces of drugs or alcohol in his system, so that didn't mess him up or anything. But there were a lot of high levels of lead and cadmium discovered in Huberty's body here. So at his autopsy, he had most likely accumulated this via an ongoing exposure to the fumes inhaled to like 13 years that he was employed as a welder, right? Because he didn't have any sufficient respiratory protection. Huberty's body was cremated on July 23, 1984. No official religious services were observed throughout this whole act or anything like that. His ashes were returned to his widow and then later interred in his home in the state of Ohio. Edna Huberty died of breast cancer in 2003.
He's been providing live reports for the past 5.5 hours. We go to him now for his report on what happened.
As we arrived shortly after the incident began, the scene was one of absolute confusion. Shots were ringing out. The nightmare was unfolding.
Make sure you approach from the south, and the CP is at 300 west. The shooting suspect is inside the McDonald's. He is contained, moving around in there. Still shots being fired.
He entered the facility heavily armed, immediately started shooting everybody. And the customers that were inside the restaurant had absolutely no chance to escape.
Oh, God. These images are more of war than of a small fast food restaurant in San Ysidro. Yet it was a local man dressed in battle fatigues who declared, "I've killed 1,000, I'm gonna kill 1,000 more." 41-year-old James Huberty reportedly walked into the restaurant carrying a semi-automatic rifle and 2 other weapons, enough ammunition to last 2 hours. Witnesses inside said he fired wildly into the unsuspecting crowd gathered for a quick evening meal. He fired through windows, hitting people in the street. He fired at men, women, children, and babies. One officer said it looked like a mass execution. Police hearing the calls coming across the radio were confused, not sure how to approach such a dangerous situation. It was all happening so fast. The SWAT team was called in to try and surround the building. Meanwhile, people who escaped, their bodies soaked with blood, were being taken care of by frantic emergency medical crews. The death toll started at 6, then 10, 20, and climbing. By 4:15, a virtual army of police and rescue personnel had crowded the main street through this border town. Suddenly, a shot was fired. Police radio screamed, "He's down, he's down, the suspect's down." James Huberty had fallen to a SWAT sharpshooter's bullet. One single bullet killed the man who had apparently systematically fired, loaded, and reloaded his weapon to kill all those people. It all happened in about an hour. No one can explain why anyone would take so many innocent lives. James Huberty didn't kill his 1,000. He killed enough to shake a whole country and make this small town wonder if its streets will ever be the same.
So after everything shook down, in the weeks following, Huberty's wife and his daughters received numerous death threats, like forcing them to temporarily reside with a family friend. So people were calling their house and flipping out and shit. All 3 of them would attend counseling session for like over a 9-month period. Now, Edna Huberty and her daughters initially relocated from San Ysidro to Chula Vista, where Zelia and Cassandra enrolled in school under assumed names. Now, 1 year later, the family moved to the community of Spring Valley in San Diego County. Local funeral homes had to use the San Ysidro Civic Center to hold the wakes for each victim. The local parish and Mount Carmel Church, they held back-to-back funeral masses in order that each of the dead could be buried in a timely manner. Several officers that responded to the scene had later suffered symptoms including like sleep withdrawal, loss of memory, guilt, and all this was following the incident. Now, several officers also suffered like post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the crime. But it's a shitty tragedy that went down, and people got it all figured out afterwards. And it just sucks everything shook down like this. Like, who thought all this shit could go down in a fucking McDonald's restaurant? You know, no matter what destination over the world. But here we are. So I figured that was a nice little tale to go on with you guys here. So I thank you guys for really fucking tuning in every time and liking my show and everything. So it's really appreciated that you guys tune back in. If you guys get a chance, pop on Facebook and check out Steph's clothing line called Monsters in Mining. So she does a lot of clothing options there. She makes mugs, coffee mugs, everything. So check that out. Give her a like, give her a follow. And if you guys want to just continue on here, like, you can check out my show on Spotify, YouTube. Actually, go to YouTube, like my shit on there. Just listen to everything on there. And you can also find my show on the We Love Radio app. This is on Metal Cross Radio. This is every Thursday at 6 p.m. 7 p.m. if you're in Canada. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful night, guys. Thanks for tuning back into Twisted Tales.
Twisted Tales.